Wheels up and welcome to Come On You Reds, the Toronto FC podcast, and we have a cup final to play. CF Montreal, Toronto FC for the Voyageurs Cup this Sunday, and we're going to break it all down for you. Gareth Wheeler alongside my main man, Academy coach, former TFC Canada midfielder Terry Dunfield, straight back home off the flight from Edmonton, where no word of a lie, about half the plane, Terry's walking in, putting his luggage in the overhead compartment, and the Terry Dunfield chants start firing up. I'm jumping on board. I'm clapping along and screaming out your name as well. Were you more embarrassed or were you more proud at that moment, Terry Dunfield?
I was super embarrassed. You could see how red I went. I was not. This is a bad joke. I wasn't flying.
Wheels down.
No, it was cool. It was, just shows like this ride of the Canadian men's national team has been incredible. And match day -1, we got to hang with the Voyageurs supporters club at the pub, and it's just been incredible.
It's incredible that you are the most gregarious guy I know, who happens to be one of the most shy people that I know. Like, we're going up in front of the Voyageurs. You were so nervous. It was just a bunch of lads at the pub. I didn't see that coming, because once that light goes on and the broadcast's on, you're like full of confidence, full of piss and vinegar. And then up there, I was like, Terry, you're going to be okay? You're a shy guy deep down somewhere in that heart.
It was just, getting used to my environment. It's the first time we've been up in front of a big crowd like that. But it was, it was a cool experience.
So on this episode, obviously heading into the last game of the season, we're going to get into that. Plenty of variables at play here as Canada goes on to try to win the Voyageurs Cup. But also, I think we should start off with Canada, because really our national team, first it was the women this year. Now it's the men. It's kind of the emotion, the popularity is swept over the entire nation as Canada comes away from chilly Edmonton, Alberta with a full 6 points, win over Costa Rica, win over Mexico, and now lead the octagonal table heading into 2022, where Canada, I don't know what you're thinking, Terry, what your math says, maybe 6 points from 6 games could be good enough to go on and punch their ticket to Qatar. As a former national team player, what does this ride, what do all these experiences, victories along the way mean for you?
Oh man, just so proud. And what's so cool about the program right now is it's sustainable. It's not random. It's not like we've stuck it in the top corner from 35 yards out and we've now defended in the box for 89 minutes and just gotten over the line and snaked 3 points. It's I think the party's just starting. This is the tip of the iceberg, and we keep going to a new level and then a new level. And it's been a journey, and I believe it's 19 games this season. No country in the world scored more goals than us. It's special, and there's just this incredible generation coming through. You've got Tiba Hutchinson still playing at 38, who ran the show beside Eustachio. You've got an incredible coaching staff that's a step ahead of everything. It's an adaptable, attacking, dynamic team to watch. And you're just not sure how they're going to come out, which makes it so difficult to defend and play against. And then the team around the team to pull off something like Edmonton is incredible, and not to just kind of rest on our laurels of that big performance at BMO against Panama. Okay, let's just go and do that again. You know what? We're going to push this team right out of its comfort zone. We'll really test the fan base. And man, the fans came through with over 100,000 attending 2 games in Edmonton. It's so special, Wheels.
So let me ask you this, because it's been a qualifying campaign and plenty of surprises. I think that maybe the biggest surprise to the Canadian public, even the hardcore soccer fans that would listen to podcasts like this, is just how quickly it's come together. I think that we all thought that Canada could compete in this final round of World Cup qualifying, but to be atop the table, the only undefeated side, or team, I should say, that comes with great surprise. Let's be honest here. So what surprises you most? How well they're playing on the field to the point where they can go on and boss Mexico and win a game against them in World Cup qualifying 2-1, Or is it the fanfare? The fact that 100,000 people would brave the conditions of Edmonton, the couple million fans watching, casual and hardcore alike, watching, on One Soccer on Sportsnet, coast to coast to coast. Is it the performance or the fanfare around the national team that surprises you more?
So we peaked out at, what was it, 3.5 million watched it on TV? That came out yesterday.
Yeah, that's a big number, man.
5 million people heard me say deaccelerate. Decelerate. That's all I thought to myself.
Really?
Deaccelerate.
When you said it, I was like, sure, go for it. I don't know.
So as soon as
broadcasters, William Shakespeare over there. Don't worry.
3.5 million came out yesterday. That was the first thing I thought. Man, 3.5 million people now know I can't speak English.
But you said it with a lot of passion and emotion. Doesn't matter. You did it.
Am I surprised about the fans and how sparked they've been? And it's just like there's this snowball effect, Ice Tekka style, that's happening right now. Am I surprised? No, we've seen it with the women. We've seen it at TFC with those incredible playoff runs and CONCACAF Champions League runs that soccer's loved in Canada. And if you've got an exciting winning brand, the fans want that. They crave that. So no, I'm not super surprised. I think you tested the fan base going to Edmonton, and to have 50,000 people in that weather, that's incredible. And then from a team's perspective, I think you've got so much quality in that team individually, and very different types of quality. And I think the coaching staff and the team have done a great job of recruitment and just spending a lot of time in that area to bring in Eustachio, bring in Stephen Vittoria, convince Igbo to come into the squad. So it's really a special group. But what do you do with that ingredients? How do you bring all of that together where they're no longer playing for themselves? I remember when I come into camp with Canada, coming into camp with Canada was great because I'm now an international, and maybe this can help my career, but it's no longer what the shirt can do to help a player. It's now a duty. It's now a responsibility to play for your country. And there's this extreme brotherhood that we talk about so much, that's just bubbling over within that group, so that if Jonathan David isn't starting, and he doesn't care, he's going to come on for 30 minutes and crush it, even though he scored against Costa Rica and he's $100 million player, $80 million player. He's fine with that. If Osorio, for this window plays a smaller role on the pitch, that's fine. He's still going to be a leader off it. So I think what surprised me the most is how John's been able to bring together all this quality, big personalities, and just harness it in this incredible direction where it's no longer John's team. It's the players' team, and the players are playing for something bigger than themselves.
It's Canada's team. I love it.
Yeah, Canada's team.
And they reflect the country so well. Like there's a brashness, but not a cockiness or arrogance, right? Like it's one thing winning games and being, and being very good. It's another thing being likable. This team is just so likable. And I think the Davies goal, like the fact that he is must-see TV, what we experienced at BMO Field against Panama, I think that the fire was fizzling, right? Like it was burning, but now someone's just poured gasoline all over it. And it's just like completely blown up. Did you have a favorite moment from the window? Something that kind of stood out to you, whether it was on or off the field, something that happened?
Ooh, good one. Did you? Why don't you go first?
No, you can come back to me on this. But
I want to think about this. What was your favorite moment?
We'll both come back. I'm not sure I had just one moment. I made sure when I'm at a stage in my career where you just don't want to take anything for granted. And I've been so fortunate to be around TFC on championship winning nights. And now we're going on this crazy ride with the national team. I just made sure I took some time just to sit back and take it all in, just like the enormity of the occasion. The fact that over, the last 2 decades, I've been covering Canada, and it's always been, there's some Maple Leaf, there's some good, solid Canadian noise, but It's whether it's El Salvador, Honduras, or whoever else. It just seems like they're the ones that make the occasion. So I wanted to take it all in, see what this meant to all the fans who have continued to support this group, what it meant to the coaching staff. We had a nice moment with John Herdman post game, what it means to the players. I just made sure, like, you know, I just don't want to take any of this for granted. And I want to be able to sit back and be like, oh, I remember when that happens, right? Because when you're covering stuff like this, it's so easy just to be so focused on your job that you don't kind of enjoy the process. And I think I'm just kind of making sure I sit back and I enjoy it as it all plays out.
Nice. I like
No, that makes sense.
So I've got 4 I've written down.
4?
Yeah.
I stretched it out long enough for you to write them all down.
Yeah, no, this is the first time I was like, Wheeler, just keep doing your thing. No, I'm messing. I've actually got 5 now. So
give him another 20 seconds. 6, make it 6.
Erica, am I okay to keep going with this? Okay.
Just
if
go.
You don't hear anything, just keep going. So he's giving us the green light. So we'll start on that one. So like our broadcast is so passionate. It comes from the right place. It's real. We're behind this team. But now like Canada's going to another level, 3.5 million people. One Soccer is now working with Sportsnet. And we're now hitting this international fan base. And it was so cool. We had Scott Moore come in and talk to us about how we can just tighten up our broadcast a little bit. And I thought that was a sign of, you know, wow, this is now big time. And you've got Scott Moore, who ran Hockey Night in Canada, is just giving us a little bit of feedback. I thought that was really cool. And in 5-6 years of broadcasting, haven't had a ton of that. So I thought that was special. And number 2, I would say, in no order. So that one just came up to me. Just before the Costa Rica game, Wheels, I didn't speak for an hour. And I'm sure you can attest to this in the booth. Just True. Watching the stadium fill up with 50,000 fans in Edmonton and like minus ridiculous weather, and just seeing everyone coming out to support Canada. I thought that was cool. Daniil Henry crushing Lozano, and like, this is our house. And, you know, if you're going to come to Canada, this is what you're going to get. Not only are you going to get a quality footballing display, and it took a little while for the game to open up. But you know what? There was some grit to the performance. And I thought Daniil, who was carrying something and unfortunately had to come off, the former TFC player, really laid out a statement in that first 5 minutes to Lozano. Number 3, I think there was a great KPI for Canada and the decision to come to Edmonton when Mexico didn't come out for the warm-up. Mexico came out for like 14 minutes, and they're all like freezing like this. They're in the like, I don't think they embraced it. And I thought at that point that was like 1-0 Canada.
Crepeau's out there for the backup goalkeeper. I pointed it out right away to you, Terry. I'm like, look, Canada's backup goalkeeper is out with short sleeves for warm up. I just, at that moment, I just was like, Canada's going to win this game. Totally. Like the mentality, right?
Yeah, that mindset piece. So it was 1-0 right there. And then just the final one. And I think that this is where football's going. And it's kind of cool. And John Herdman was ahead of the game with this. With the women's team, and I'd never seen it before as a player, and I got to work with them a little bit as a coach, and been fortunate enough to come into the Canada setup a couple times, and in-game changes and changing your lineup or slight adjustments, and completely changing your shape to just change reference points for the opposition to spark your team at something new. Mexico changed 3 times within that game to try to chase the game. And with whatever, whether it was a back 3, a single pivot, or a double pivot, as soon as they changed their shape, Canada were ready. Canada were ready for what were coming their way. And it was super cool to see us ahead of whatever Mexico were going to do. And from a technical side, that's what really stood out.
Yeah, as a coach now, you can appreciate the difficulty of that, and it's not just the thought process that goes in behind. Okay, if they do this, we're going to do this. I want to do this um, to bring about this response. But it's then having the trust and belief that you've done the work with your players to have that message come across and for them to be able to execute. So it's a two-way street, right? For the players and the coaching staff, there needs to be absolute trust in the process and belief in what you're doing. And that's what's so impressive about the number of changes that we see every game made by Herdman in Canada. It's unreal.
Yeah, so not only are they the protagonist, but that's one of the toughest skills, Will. And you nailed it, was like the teaching of it. And you've only got one session, really, match day -2, to nail it. And if the players aren't clear, you can have all the ideas in the world. It's going to look like minestrone out there. But it was, man, it was cool to see. Even though those last 5 minutes were a bit kind of.
Nah, it was fine. It was fine. Let's start transitioning the Toronto FC way. This is, after all, a Toronto FC podcast, because there's been a distinct TFC influence on the men's national team in recent years. This year specifically, the games at BMO Field, coaches being involved, including yourself in the national team program from under 23 and beyond, players, Osorio, Larea, Schaffelberg, Akinola, even at that first January camp to start 2021, the likes of Prizo, some of the younger players being called in order to have that experience. There really is a distinct TFC influence on this team, on the fanfare around this team and everything that's transpiring. And I think that's something that the club and its fans can take great pride in, that, you know, TFC has been one of the building blocks to creating this foundation, which John has obviously taken and built upon and taken to another level.
For sure. I think there's a core of TFC that's been involved in this program for a long, long time. I'd imagine on MLSE's probably working hard to hopefully ensure that that's going to be the case on the women's side. But it's really special. I remember I used to come into camp with Daniil and Ashton Morgan, and we kind of go to get the airport together, and you're proud because you're representing TFC with Canada, and there's a real football factory going on here at TFC in the academy. There's tons of quality coming through, and I think next year, the hard work of Anthony Capitoso and all the coaches in the academy, I think you'll start to see the fruits of that labor next year when you see 6 or 7 academy players, and that's going to just lead to more options for John Herdman.
Just a quick thought on Larea and Osorio, the two players we saw. We know that Oso wanted to play a lot more. He's played a massive role in this qualifying campaign thus far, scoring the equalizer at the Azteca. He's still a heart and soul leader in this team. I know a 2-game window made things difficult for John because there's legit competition for places in the team. So maybe your initial thoughts on Osorio, then we'll get into Larea.
So for Osorio, he has so much quality, but probably a superpower, and it doesn't get spoken about enough. It's just how competitive he is, and what an absolute winner he is. And he really is a Mexico killer with TFC and with Canada. Every time he's played against them, he's been the best player on the field. He's different class. His skill set just it fits nicely against Mexico, and he's able to just find time and space and goals, and it'd have been tough for him probably not to play. But again, you go back to that brotherhood, and I think the big picture is getting to the show. It's getting to the World Cup, and I'm sure Jonathan Osorio knows his moment will come. And the last window, man, he was arguably Canada's best player.
Yeah,
but,
he was awesome.
He got out. He had a little cameo at the end to help Canada get over the line against Mexico. Just going into Richie Larea.
Yeah.
I saw a mature player against in this window. He played a little bit deeper, especially against Costa Rica. He was almost a stay-at-home right back. got up for it a little bit more against Mexico. Could have won a penalty. You thought it was a stonewaller. But when I say it was a professional performance, he wasn't playing with a point to prove. He was just executing in the moment. And that's a sign of a player maturing, in my opinion, that he had nothing to prove to anyone. He was just an absolute pro out there, and whatever moment came his way, he dealt with. He didn't force things. I thought his defensive game, especially 1v1 or in overload situations, was excellent. But the word that comes to mind is professional, reliable, and it was a real team player performance over the two games.
I honestly cannot believe how far Richie has come in such a short period of time. It wasn't that long ago he came to TFC on trial. Came looking for an opportunity. And I remember speaking to Vanny and Dan Kalishman and a number of members of that coaching staff. I'm like, you actually think you're going to be able to transition him to a fullback? And they're like, yeah, we've had him slotted in as that profile for quite some time. We really like the player. We believe in him. And look what he does now. Like, he can come inside and play there at times. You actually see him do that because he's so versatile, Terry. He can play it on the left. He can play it on the right. He can play in all kinds of roles, more advanced, deeper. I mean, this is a player that's blossomed before our eyes. Toronto FC started that shift, started that change in the way that he plays. And again, the player has applied himself. He's fully embraced this opportunity. Now he's a player. I don't care who you're playing it. You can't take him out of the team at all. Like, he is a fixture in Canada's starting 11 because he brings the tactical flexibility. He brings the intensity. He brings so much to the table for you every time he's on the field.
I like what you said about tactical flexibility, and it allows you to make in-game changes.
Yes.
It allowed Canada to rest Alistair Johnston and just throw a curveball to Costa Rica's scouting team when you don't see him in the 11 for that first game. And it would have been difficult for him as well, Wheels, in there's speculation around is that big move to Europe coming? And it's tough you've got that in the back of your mind. And, if this is something Richie would like and it would make sense for TFC, you never know. But like, when you know that there might be a move on the cards, it's a difficult one for players. And often you'll see players try a little bit too hard and just try to, show that, what, I want to seal that deal. And Richie's just so comfortable with his game right now that wasn't the case. He just went out there and played.
Last thing on this, it was cold. Like, the Costa Rica game wasn't that cold. It was above freezing, but against Mexico, it was cold. It said -9, wind chill -14. I just think back to those two MLS Cup finals at BMO Field. I think I felt colder on those nights at BMO. Did you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was cold in Edmonton. I think it might have been exaggerated a little bit. I felt those nights at BMO were freezing, especially the first one against Seattle.
I was.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
I know.
It took me like 3 days to warm up. My only reprieve was when Josie scored. Or when I got up, that's why I made that save. But I don't know. I think the picture we painted on the broadcast of Ice Jacka and the snow around the field, and it maybe wasn't as cold as what the TV screens portrayed, if that makes sense. Like it didn't quite get into your bones. Having said that, we were inside, so I don't know.
Yeah, we were strategic and kept the window closed for that last game. And lastly, shout out to Sam Adekubi, an all-time celebration diving into the snowbank. Almost as good as Terry downfield diving into the crowd after scoring against Ecuador. Those are the two greatest dives in Canadian men's national team history. So good on the boys. It was an awesome experience. And looking forward to January already, a game that might be played at BMO Field. Keep your eyes and ears open for that. Canada, United States, another big one upcoming in the first month of 2022. Okay, we have a cup final to talk about. Canadian Championship final goes Sunday afternoon at Stade Saputo, 1 p.m. Eastern time. CF Montreal, I guess the reigning champs from 2019, because we still don't have a 2020 champion, taking on Toronto FC. It was the final was 2 legs last time out. and Tsubasa Endo scored the 1-0 goal to win that game at BMO Field, but it went to penalties because of the 1-0 loss in the first leg, and Toronto FC fell to CF Montreal. This Montreal team is like completely different. Like Clement Diop was a goalkeeper, like Boyan took a penalty that day. So it's vastly changed. So I'm not sure if historical context matters so much. To me, Terry, the first storyline I'm looking at is clearly a disappointing season for Toronto FC. It has to be considered a disappointing season for CF Montreal. They have to feel deflated because for weeks it looked like they were playoff bound, wound up falling short, didn't qualify for the MLS Cup playoffs. So these are two teams that are going to be out to try to prove something and come away, with a positive to end their season in the form of silverware and a berth in the CONCACAF Champions League. Is that how you're looking at this? Like a game that both these teams is going to be a little bit of a fight, go out and take out your frustration on one another and try to finish as strong as you can?
I think that's important. You have to look at the backstory of how we've got into this final. And if we start with TFC, I think I know it's been a difficult year. Almost everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Change of manager, difficult preseason. Javier Perez takes over. It's a real difficult hand he was dealt. Picks up some points, and then tons of injuries again. A little bit unlucky maybe to not pick up more points. Performances were pretty solid. Yeah, I thought Javier did a great job, and we've spoken about it tons on the pod, to find an identity, reorganize the group, and that was a 4-5-1, and that shapes, the players bought into, and defend a little bit deeper, be very good in transition. And unfortunately, come the end of the season, that wasn't enough to be in the mix-up or the shout to get into the playoff race. And probably about 8 weeks ago, the priority became the Canadian Championships. And Javier was clever. He rested players, didn't bring everyone to Atlanta, ensured that York United, Pacific weren't going to be obstacles in the way. And in fairness to the CPL clubs, they just weren't at TFC's level. So I think the focus for the last 2 months has been this final. It's a tricky one to navigate the last couple of weeks when the season's over. There's international games. You've not got everybody at the training ground to work with. But from a mindset standpoint, I think that TFC's fully engaged. This trophy is very important. And what's difficult for the club with expectations so high is that when you have a season like this, it's questions are going to be asked, and all Javier and the squad can do once the playoffs were no longer were going to be achievable is, okay, let's make sure we win a trophy. Let's build some momentum for next season, and getting over the line is going to be tough against your rival.
And that's what I'm wondering here, Terry, because TFC were fully committed to the Canadian Championship against York, against Pacific. Name full teams. This has been a clear focus for Montreal. I mean, they haven't played their first team regulars in either one of the two games leading up to this final. Does that matter? Does that come into play when the bulk of the first team players for CF Montreal is being focused on something else? All of a sudden, boom, you're in an important cup final. Does context matter there for a former player, Terry, or for a player? Or is that just something I'm completely overrating here, that TFC may have the advantage because they've been focused on this competition for much longer?
It's an interesting one. It's a tough one to juggle for team spirit because the back end of the squad have got in CF Montreal here, and it was a tricky one against Forge. It went to 11 shooters, and Forge is a very good side, and they've had an incredible run in the CONCACAF Champions League, as we all know, and they're going to be in the competition next year. It's a decision Wilfred Nance is going to have to make. Do I trust in the guys that got me here, or do I say, you know what, Wanyama, you're going to come inside, Kyoto, Mihailovic, all my big dogs are going to come in. My gut would say he'll lean in that direction. But from a mindset standpoint for Montreal, I think TFC coming in a better place. Like it's been a slog for Montreal. They've overachieved. No one thought they'd get as close as they could. They're in the mix with 6 games to go. It seemed like no one wanted to grab that last spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. They lose to Orlando. It was a wonder goal. Player Camacho sent off. So they've had injuries in the run in too. So like now Montreal have to somehow pick themselves up. I think the break came at the right time for them. But I'd say TFC, and this is no bias, and because I got TFC Kid on, I'd say they've been dialed in and focused on this final for a long time, where Montreal prioritized other things, and now they're going to have to pick themselves up.
Let's get into the matchup. I'm not sure how much the games that they played against one another are proper indicators on the season. It was the first game of the year. Ridiculous heat in Fort Lauderdale, 4-2. An early sending off for Noble Okello that changed the other game. TFC, bossed CF Montreal in the second half, even though Montreal had a couple of very good chances to put it away. Ended it in 1-1 draw with the last touch of the ball, Josie Altidore free kick. So what do you make of the way that these two teams match up? Do you have a good read on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I don't think you can read too much into the first two games. The other thing I'd add to that game at the start of the year was TFC hit Montreal the middle of the day, 2 days after a Champions League game. TFC
Leon, yeah,
half the squad was injured. But what you did see that day, and it was a big part of Montreal's identity, is a team that's very good in transition. The red card to Noble Okello, I think that kills the game, so it's tough to read a ton out of that game. But the last game, it was all TFC. I thought TFC were in full control. I thought it flattered Montreal that they were winning 2-0, 2-1, until extra time, and then Josie scores, and that's probably was a goal that killed Montreal in their playoff hopes. That would have been a tough one to swallow and come back from. So I'd say I think TFC have to respect Montreal in their attack. I'd be surprised if they play with a back four. I'd imagine they need maybe an extra player back there for transition. The Kyoto scares me. This guy's a player.
Yeah,
me too. I think it'd be tough for Montreal to keep hold of him. He scored for Honduras in the break. He's rapid. He's so quick. He's powerful. He can create something out of nothing. And what ends up happening sometimes when he plays is backlines just start to drop off, and they're so wary of him. What then happens is some space in front of backlines between lines opens up, and I thought it was probably the pickup of the summer, bringing Mihailovic in, almost $1 million in Gammer Tam. A boss. He's disappointed he wasn't in the U.S. squad, and I understand why. Top player. Maybe
I think he played with like the under 23 team. There was a couple games there, so he was away from Montreal for a period of time. But he's been excellent on the season. Yeah, he's taken full. Like they have a decent spine in the team. Like Camacho's played well. Piet Wanyama provides some strength in the middle of the park. Mihailovic, Kyoto up top. I do think that this is a decent team. Do I think they're a great team? No, but they're a team that's going to be well-structured, difficult to break down, difficult to play against. That's actually a compliment for a team that might be a little bit short on that top end talent, Terry.
Yeah, I'd say talent-wise, they're good. Mihailovic, since he's been given the keys to a team, in Chicago, that was never the case. He's one of the best 10s in the league, and he's surprisingly dynamic too. He can run past the player. All of a sudden you think he's going to get it in the gap, and he'll run in behind. Wanyama, Montreal or Nancy finally he found the way to get the best out of him, and him and Piet, as you brought up, are great in a double pivot. Wanyama said he loved it. Came out this week in the media and said he was linked maybe with a move back to Celtic. Said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm loving life at CF Montreal. So that's good to hear. And probably just if you look at them, I guess by the eye or subjectively, they're very well organized. I think you touched on that. The spacing's excellent. Wilfred Nancy was an academy coach for 7-8 years. He knows his stuff. And they don't give away a ton. And now with everybody fit, they've got that kind of attacking threat. Kamal Miller's been a big pickup as well for them. Who's
absolutely absolute stud, Kamal Miller. And James Pantemis, who was on Canada duty as well, is taking advantage of his opportunity. Played in the CPL last year as well. Two more things I want to get to before we wrap up here. One has to do with TFC selection. There's no shortage of attacking options for TFC. I think that there may be some questions at the back, however. At the time of taping this, we haven't heard from Javier Perez about player availability, but what we do know is Omar Gonzalez couldn't play that final game of the year, ended up coming out. The Canadian Championship game has been carrying something for quite some time. He's been a beast. He hasn't complained, hasn't whined. He's just gone on with it, tries to play as much as possible. I'm sure he'll give it a go for the weekend. Kamar Lawrence was on international duty with Jamaica. He left at halftime against the United States. We'll monitor his progress. Arrow's been carrying something as well. You do have options, Terry. Michael Bradley shifted, and he's played at center back, and I think he's done a nice job in that position, to be fair. Is that where your biggest question marks lie in terms of how this team plays? Like if you're trying to pencil in what in an 11, what the team looks like this weekend, how close are you to kind of, putting your finger on one and saying, yeah, that's the team I want to play?
Yeah, Omar and Lawrence are big losses for sure, if that is the case. If that's the case. But what's nice, and since the playoffs were kind of going to be difficult, Javier Perez has done a good job of picking and finding the right moments for the kids to play. And Julian Dunn was excellent against Atlanta. He came in and it was just a real, similar to Richie Larea for Canada. It was just a professional performance. He took care of business. You didn't even know he was out there against some very good attackers. And he just shored up that right-hand side. So if Julian Dunn comes in at the back, I'm okay with that. Similar with Okello, if he needs to come into midfield. And I'm sure he'd like to put things right in Montreal as well after that red card, which was harsh. Not sure on Celteldo and what our attack will look like. But one positive is Josie Altidore looked like Josie Altidore 3 years ago. He looks like a kid out on the pitch, just having fun, trusting his body. He said, my body's good. The surgery took away some pain in his foot. He's scoring, and he makes others around him better. He's so if he's good to go. If I'm Montreal in that tunnel and I see Josie there, I'm like, oh dang, because he's a
Montreal killer. He's a Montreal killer. He's scored more goals against them than anyone else. He loves to play against his rival. Loves it. That's it. Doesn't sound like Soteldo will be fit enough to play. I mean, that can change, obviously. But I think your front three kind of picks itself with Altidore, Pozuelo, and Schaffelberg. You know that Osorio and Delgado are going to be in that midfield, likely with Okello, Bradley, and we'll see. Maybe Lawrence, maybe Gonzalez. I can see that happening with, Richie, and hopefully Arrow can go. If not, JMO at the back. That's kind of the basis of your team. Bones is back training. He'll provide competition to Q as your goalkeeper. So I think that's pretty close to the team that you'll see on Sunday. I haven't been around training. I'm just wagering a guess here that that's what the team is going to look like.
I think that this is a positive for us too, in that it'll be for Wilfred Nancy to go, okay, this is how TFC are going to play. And I think we're pretty certain how Montreal play. They've been in this 3-4-3 for a little while. So I think we know how Montreal will play, and I think it'll be difficult. It's difficult to select a TFC 11 right now, and with it being the last game of the season too, you're not holding anything back. There's not a midweek game. It's a cup final. TFC will be able to get after it.
That was kind of where I wanted to go for my last point here. Sunday's going to kind of feel like the end of a chapter for Toronto FC. There's no secret. There's going to be changes that will be made when the season comes to an end. The coaching staff, there's question marks around that. Rumors continue to swirl about potential future coaches of Toronto FC from a player perspective, whether the players are out of contract, whether TFC will end up moving on from players. How does that all play a role come Sunday? Because there's a part of me that thinks that, these are professional players. If their future's in doubt, they want to leave on a high. But there's other players, I think, that they still need to go out and make an impression, Terry. Like, there might be players where they're kind of on that line where Toronto FC's like, is this player really part of the solution? or can we move on from them and, maybe upgrade in certain areas? So I think there's a little bit of a go out and prove it to me Sunday attitude that should be prevailing within the team. I at least hope is prevailing in the team, that maybe provides that little bit of extra incentive. So what do you make of playing this final game, knowing it is the final game of the season with an off season of, great unknown straight ahead?
Yeah, good one. Really good one. It's a difficult one. I think if players are motivated by showing that I want to be here at the club next year, or I need a good performance to secure a move elsewhere, and are looking after their futures, and that's their mindset, I think that can be a problem, because any adversity, the team will go in different directions. And this is where I go back to Javier Perez and the mindset around TFC. For the last 8 weeks, they've been dialed into this competition. And I don't think in football, and we've seen it with Canada a little bit, that you can't just turn it on. I think you need to bring it every day. And I think the group is prepared. They'll be ready. I'm not, like we said, I'm not sure who the 11 will be. But the team have to stick together. And if they can do that, there's tons of quality in that changing room, where I think they'll be fine. They'll be, you put your hard work in over the last 8 weeks, a cup final, just go out and enjoy it. Go out and execute. Enjoy stuffing your rival.
Yeah, I'm with you on all that. I actually think they can use it as an advantage, as it's been a proud group with a winning tradition that they've established over 6 years. They understand that it's not good enough. So I'm really looking forward to the mentality, because generally when teams are up for a scrap, this group responds. Like, there's some real character in this team. I know it's been tested over the course of the season, but I have no doubt that from a mental perspective, this team will be raring to go on the weekend. I think it's also helpful that this hasn't dragged out any longer. It's being played basically as soon as you could play after the international window as well. I think that's good as well. So it's like, okay, we're in a sprint here. Give everything for the next 2 weeks, and then we're out. Now we can enjoy some time, because whether you're Toronto FC, Montreal, Vancouver, they have had to deal with tests that other sides across Major League Soccer just haven't had to go to that extreme. Starting the season in a bubble, away from home for long periods of time as well, and everything that goes along with that. It's been an exhausting 2021. And I think that being able to see the finish line, it might do a world of good for these players heading into the final. So Terry and I are pumped. We're going to be on the call on the weekend. Make sure you save your voice.
No, I just quickly on that, Wheels. Like there's something to be said for a hardened group, that when the chips are down, and the pressure's there, that they take their performance to another level. And this is why. And there's still a lot of members from the core group that have won MLS Cups, Supporters Shield, went deep in the CONCACAF Champions League, penalty shootout away from being the first MLS club to win that. Have had success on the international stage now, and that experience, Wheels, is so important. And there's a couple players in the Montreal changing room that have had that too. But if there is going to be mass change, then you know what? Let's go out with the trophy.
To the fans, enjoy it. Reds on tour, Reds on the road. I know there would be a lot of people making the trip to Montreal. You haven't been able to travel that much this year. Obviously, travel restrictions. Perfect. Spend a Saturday night in Montreal, Sunday afternoon at Stade Saputo, and come home as champions. Sounds like a good weekend to me. So go on, make some noise, and take advantage of Montreal at a time where there's some problems between the club and its supporters. So it's a good chance to make your voice heard and have you be the dominant supporters inside that stadium on the weekend. Terry, we'll see you Sunday. We're looking forward to it. Then we'll be back next week to wrap it all up and look ahead to what's going to be a compelling, you got to stay tuned type of offseason for Toronto FC. Any final words? No, you're just going to stare at me.
No, I thought that that was us done and dusted, mate. Final words?
Well, no, we just needed that one last awkward moment. I can wrap up now, because this is how I wrap up.
We already ticked that box.
I want to thank our producer, Erica. Top work as always. It's my main man, Terry Dunfield. Terry Dunfield. There's only one Terry Dunfield. One Terry Dunfield. On behalf of everyone at TFC, I am Gareth Wheelering. This has been Come On You Reds.